Well, welcome back. We hope you had a good lunch and a good discussion about communication and conflict resolution. And we are ready to launch into our next one. And so we're going to be talking about needs in the marriage relationship in this next 50 minutes. And so, again, this is huge, folks. Not only for our marriage relationships, but for all of our relationships. It's not just about marriage. We're created with needs, and so we're going to talk about that, like I said, for this next 50 minutes. Understanding needs. 1 Corinthians 11, 10 and 11 says, "In the Lord, however, woman is not independent of man, nor is man independent of woman. For as woman came from man, so also man is born of woman, but everything comes from God." Everything comes from God. Remember, in Genesis, God said it's not good that man should be alone. I will create a helper suitable for him. It's about meeting needs. It's not that I'm incomplete and that Carmen completes me. I just have a problem with that whole thing of completing. I'm complete in Christ. I'm a whole person in Christ. But God gave me a helper to make me a better person, to sharpen me, to be in relationship with, to teach me more about him, to meet needs. I mean, I had a young man that I was mentoring one time, and he says, "Well, Chris, I don't know if I'm called to be married." And I said, "Well, are you called to be celibate for life?" And he goes, "Oh, no, I'm not called to be celibate." I'm going, "Then what's the option here? You need to get married." And so the marriage relationship is a huge place for the needs to be met. And so we have to realize that we're created with needs. First with God and with each other. It's not good that man should be alone. We're created for a relationship. But we also need to know that God has to be the focus for our needs. And we're going to talk more about that. But I also have to be concerned about meeting my spouse's needs. Even though God needs to be the focus, I need to be used of God.
And the marriage relationship is a place to meet needs and have your needs met. And we're going to go into detail more on each one of these. And then the last one, everyone has different needs. And so again, you know, God created us with needs, and in the marriage relationship, there are a lot of needs that can be met only in that relationship.
Exactly. And, you know, the experts talk about finances or sex being the number one reason for divorce. I think it's unmet needs. In our counseling, you know, couples come to us, they're not communicating well, they're not doing this, they're not doing that. The bottom line is there's unmet needs, and when couples get to that point where they split up, it's really because of unmet needs.
So what could happen in a relationship when needs are not being met? So we're going to go over that.
Yeah, there's a downward spiral of unmet needs. And so we have unmet needs, and that leads to hurt. We're in pain because we have these needs and they're not being met. Again, we're created with needs. That hurt leads to anger. We get mad where our needs aren't being met, and we end up getting mad about that. But then it leads to fear. Fear that our needs aren't going to be met. And then it leads to guilt. Well, you know, if I was a godly person, I wouldn't have these needs. We tend to take on that guilt that, you know, it's been so long since we've had met needs that now maybe we shouldn't have them. And then it leads to apathy. And I tell you what, when couples come to us for counseling, if they're fighting like cats and dogs and arguing and yelling at each other, sometimes we'll even have couples say, well, you must think we're awful. And it's like, well, your interaction could be better, but we don't think you're awful because at least you're engaged. When a couple's sitting on the couch and they're sitting at opposite ends of the couch and they're leaning away from each other, and the wife's saying, you know what, I don't care what he does, then I'm praying ferociously because it's only God who can save that marriage. When they get to apathy and they just flat don't care anymore, it's one step away from divorce. So let's look at needs in the marriage relationship. In unhealthy relationships, we're looking at each other. There's expectations of our spouse. There's demanding of our spouse. We're taking to get our needs met, or we're hiding or throwing our needs at our spouse. Needs become a point of contention, and God is just left out of the relationship. And so everything is about what you're doing and not doing, what my spouse is doing or not doing.
Exactly. And what are we focused on? We're focused on our spouse and what they're not doing, as opposed to coming before God and asking Him to help you how you can serve or meet your spouse's needs. But as long as we're just focused on what our mate is not doing, then we've excluded God out of the picture. And, again, we talk about how we're all supposed to be Christians, and where should our focus be? It should be on Christ, not on our mate.
And needs are a major problem in the marriage relationships. Again, in our counseling, we see this time and time again. And so unmet needs is the major problem. If needs are being met, then they're probably not coming for counseling.
So James 4:1 says, what causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desire, that battle within you? You want something, but you don't get it. You kill and covet, but you cannot have what you want. You quarrel and fight. You do not have because you do not ask God. When you ask, you do not receive because you ask with wrong motives, that you may spend what you get on your own pleasures. Now, isn't that the truth?
And so, again, like we saw in our graphic, it becomes all about each other. And what, like James says, what isn't it that our own desires that battle within us? Our needs become our driving focus rather than drawing us to God. They're driving us against each other. And so we become selfish, we become self-centered, we're angry, my needs aren't being met. And this is what drove us almost to divorce 7 years into our marriage. We're both trying to get our needs met. Carmen was insecure, had been raised in a very insecure environment, wanted me to be there for her and meet all her needs as she saw them fit, as she saw them to be met. And for me, that's why I married her. She was going to meet my needs and take care of me and make me happy, and we're going to live happily ever after. And that didn't last very long. And so what's the bottom line? The bottom line is people are selfish. Life becomes about me. And that's not supposed to be the Christian way. Yes, we have boundaries. That's what we talked about this morning. But at the same token, life all about me is so unfulfilling.
And again, notice that God is out of the picture. But many times, and we have to all admit it, we did it too. When we did go to God, you know what? It was about me. And what does He say? Because you asked with wrong motives. We're not fooling God for one moment. We want this person changed. Why? To make us happy. Instead of asking God, Lord, help me to change me so I can please you. And if I can please you, I can please him. But our motive is change him. And you know what? It doesn't, nothing happens. You still end up being miserable and you're saying, but I'm coming to God. But you know what? If you come to God, making it about you, to help you, you know what? God will work on your needs.
Yeah. Amen. And it's interesting, Timothy Keller wrote the book Why Marriage Matters. And in that, he says that once we marry, three things happen. One, we discover that this person we married is selfish. And then we find out this person is pointing out our selfishness. And then we decide, well, their selfishness is worse than my selfishness. And we're off to the races. Too many couples never get past that point. They never get to a point where they're accepting of each other and being used of God in the other person's life. It becomes all about this contention between us, trying to get our needs met, trying to be fulfilled, and expecting the other person to do it. It's not going to happen. In healthy relationships, God becomes the focus. Both spouses look to God to meet their needs. Their faith and their trust is in God, not in their spouse. And really what we're doing is making our spouse an idol. We're putting them before God because we're looking to them to meet our needs rather than to God. Our expectations now are in God rather than in our spouse. Our expectations are where they're supposed to be because they're not supposed to be in our spouse. But there's got to be a connection. And so, yes, we make our needs known to our spouse in love. That's the communication. You know, if we're not getting the need met that's supposed to be met in the marriage relationship, we use ABC. We use mirror, validate, empathize, and communicate that to our spouse in love, but we also have to be giving to meet needs. And so when we have this in perspective, when we're doing it God's way, our faith, our trust, our expectations are in God, not in our spouse, then we're going to be in a much better place.
And you notice that in this triangle, as each of you are focusing on God and looking to God, and both of you are doing that, you're getting closer to God, but you're also getting closer to each other.
Okay.
But again, you know, too many people, we leave God completely out of the picture, and it's like, when you change or you do something, then I'll do something.
Right.
But it doesn't change, right? We stay the way we are because, again, our focus, our relationship is all wrong.
Right. So we like this quote by writer Ken Kington. He says, if you're looking for someone to meet your needs, make you happy, and make your life worthwhile, you will be greatly disappointed, quickly discouraged, and basically unhappy the rest of your life. But if you will just be the person God has made you to be and find out how you can give your life to someone else by meeting their needs, making them happy, you will discover fulfillment, joy, and peace in ways you can't even imagine. Folks, this is the gospel. This is dying to self, giving of ourself to someone else. Yes.
Isn't that what Jesus did for us?
It's exactly what he did for us. Again, what is love? This is how we know what love is. Jesus Christ gave himself for us. And so it's giving of ourselves for our spouse. And I can tell you that this works because our first 7 years of marriage, and unfortunately even beyond that, was about the first part of this quote. I was looking for Carmen to make my life worthwhile, to make me happy, and meet my needs.
And I was doing the same thing.
Yeah. And so we're just striving with each other, against each other, rather than striving with each other towards God's goals. When we started living the second part of this, it transformed our relationship. Now it's all about God. Yes, I have needs. Yes, I express those needs to my wife. And she strives to meet my needs, but you know what? I'm here to meet her needs. And so as I seek to meet her needs, guess what? She wants to meet my needs, and now we're in the happy circle rather than the vicious circle. Because I'm focused on what I can do for her rather than what she can do for me.
Philippians 2:3-4 says, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility consider others or your spouse better than yourself. Each of you should not only look to your own interests, but also to the interests of others."
Yeah. Again, being focused, where is our focus? Is it on myself or my spouse? Again, Ken Kington says success in life is not what we get, it's in what we give. Things we obtain, power we possess, fame we achieve will never fill that lasting need we can only find in giving. It's about giving. And when we have that attitude of giving, yes, I believe it's going to transform not only our marriage relationship, but all of our relationships. So the bottom line, what do we do to discover our spouse's needs? 1 Corinthians 7:33 says, "A married man is concerned about the affairs of this world, how he can please his wife." And 7:34 goes on to say, "A married woman is concerned about the affairs of this world, how she can please her husband." Folks, like Carmen said before, the ministry is not your primary life focus. It's a marriage relationship. If you want to be free to serve God and nothing else, then stay single. But remember, Jesus said only a few are called to this, called to that celibacy. And if you're called to that, praise God. But if you're not, you have to be concerned about the things of the world. How to please your wife, how to please your husband. And so it takes some effort. We have to invest in this relationship. And folks, this is my life. I tell people I'm reading about marriage, I'm studying about marriage, I'm helping other couples in their marriage through counseling, I'm writing, I'm teaching, or I'm digging myself out of the hole I got myself into with my wife. Have I done okay today? So today, I'm doing okay. But that's not every day. You know what? We're not perfect. But where is our focus? So how do we discover our spouse's needs? Number one, ask. Did I ever think to ask?
Yeah, I remember the first time that Chris approached me and asked me what I needed. You know what I did? I started bawling like a baby. Bawling like a baby. And he goes, "Oh my gosh, what did I do wrong?" I said, "You didn't do anything wrong right now. But the fact that you're asking me, what do I need?" He had never done that before in 20-some years. And I was just so blessed and blown away that he would ask me that.
Wow.
I do that too. You know? Ask you what you need. What can I do?
And so we've gotten into that habit because this is going to change from time to time. And we're going to look more at it. But the first thing is just ask or observe. We need to learn our spouse. What do they do? And you know, Carmen's a very giving person. She's very tight with herself when buying things. So, you know, I make it an effort to see what she wants and try to buy her presents something that she would want. It takes some effort, takes some observation. I know I need to work at it more.
When he says buy something, Yeah, I mean, he does. I mean, because we're missionaries and we raise support and so forth. So our funds are pretty limited. So, you know, when he knows that one of my love languages are gifts, so he'll go and buy me one of my favorite candy, which I really don't need, but I appreciate it. Or he'll go pick a rose out of the yard, or put notes in the house and writes on the mirror. And, you know, it doesn't cost him anything but just the time and the thought. And I so appreciate that. But like Chris was saying, you know, we need to observe. I remember this couple came over to help us in our ministry, and we were in the hotel, and they stayed in the room with us, and she's like running all over, getting everything ready and stuff, and he's just sitting there and would always complain that she was always late. And it was like, you know, you could watch and see how she's running crazy. You could at least get up and say, honey, what can I help you with? But too often we don't do that. We don't pay attention. We're not focused. We're not observing or watching. But you can pick up a lot just by watching.
Yeah.
So observe.
And the last thing is experiment. What a fun way to build relationship is experiment on some of the things that we're going to talk about in a minute, and how you can meet your spouse's needs. And, you know, try gifts and giving them things or doing things for him or her, or, you know, there's a variety of things you can do to experiment, and it's really a fun way to work on your relationship and learn about your spouse. I imagine a lot of you have heard of Love and Respect. Emerson Eggerichs wrote the book Love and Respect. I'm a little bit jealous. His ministry, he has a whole life ministry based on one verse of the Bible. I've got about 256 scriptures that my ministry is based on. But you know, the thing is what he talks about is, like Carmen said, right on. Because in Ephesians 5:33 it says, each one of you must also love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband. And it's saying that the bottom line need for a woman is to be loved, and the bottom line need for a man is to be respected.
And it's interesting how God put that in there, because women tend to disrespect their husbands, and husbands tend to hold back love from their wives. The very thing that we need, bottom core, what man needs, what woman needs, we tend to hold back on those things. And again, if we're not doing this, folks, we're in sin. We don't think about it that way, but we are in sin. And wives, if you are disrespecting your husband, you are in sin, because God is telling you, respect him. And husbands, if you're not showing love to your wife, if you're holding love back from them because they didn't meet your needs or they didn't do what you think they should be doing, you're in sin. Because you're holding back love that God is telling you, love your wife. And it's not a condition. It's a command.
Right. And so what Dr. Eggerichs says, he says that without love, a woman reacts without respect. And without respect, the man will react without love. And so we end up in this vicious circle, and he calls it the crazy cycle. And so we end up just going around and around and around. And just like what Timothy Keller wrote, you know, we're both selfish, we're both focused on the other person's selfishness, we're focused on what we're not getting, and we're not going to move forward. We're just going around and around trying to get our needs met. And so what Dr. Eggerichs says is that the more mature one needs to step out of the circle and say, you know what, even though he's not loving me, I'm going to respect him. Or even though she's not respecting me, I'm going to love her. and it's giving without condition. I talk about 100-0 marriage. And I even had a Promise Keeper speaker one time say, "Men, we need to bump it up to 60-40. I'm going, really? 60-40? What if Jesus only gave 60%? I'm going to die part way for your sins. You got to earn the rest of the way." You know what? We're all going to hell. It is, Jesus gave 100%, expecting nothing. While we're yet sinners, Christ died for us. And what did Ephesians 5:25? Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself for her. 100-0.
Even when she didn't deserve it.
Even when she didn't deserve it. And so, husbands, that's our challenge, to love our wives unconditionally. And you know what? I will tell you, Carmen told me at one point to stop saying this 100-0 thing because you're not doing it. You know what? I'm fallible. Some days I get close to 100%.
I'm sorry. That
was a long time ago. She doesn't say that anymore. But no, I'm probably not going to hit 100% and expecting 0. But that's my aim. It's not about the doing, it's about the being who God made me to be, and loving my wife as Christ loved the church.
And if you aim for 50%,
yeah,
you may hit 20%.
Yeah, what am I going to hit? If I aim for 60%, like this pastor was suggesting, I'm going to hit 50%, it's ridiculous. I want to aim for 100%, and if I get 80%, then hey, I'm doing pretty good.
And if we both aim for 100%, then we're in a win-win situation.
Yeah.
Where there's peace and harmony between our relationship, and guess what? We're glorifying God.
Amen.
And we're being that testimony that for the world to see there is something different about that couple.
Okay. So let's look at some needs. The experts say that women
have a need for affection, caring, companionship, devotion, patience, respect, security, sensitivity, significance, trustworthiness, unconditional love, and understanding. That's just some.
Right. And that's tendencies for women. And so if you're a guy and you need affection, that doesn't make you a sissy. This is going to cross over some, but women tend to need these things. And so we go back to the experience, experimenting. Try some of these things and see what your wife, maybe she needs or stands out, doesn't stand out. This gives us an area to start in discovering our wives' needs. And on the flip side, men tend to need acceptance, admiration, appreciation, approval, companionship, encouragement, support, physical responsiveness, respect, to be needed, trust, and spiritual connection, and unconditional love. Again, that's tendencies for men.
And again, these are in your workbook too.
Yes. And so I do want to point out companionship, because we do this in Spanish also. And in Spanish, companionship for men and women translate to different words. But a companionship for a woman is not the same as companionship for a man. If I'm watching a football game and my wife is sitting next to me, I'm in heaven, especially if we're not talking. And so she can be taking a nap, she can be doing needlepoint, she can be doing anything. If she's sitting there with me, I'm feeling companionship and I'm feeling great. Do you think that's companionship for her? No way.
But I do it. Because
do.
I know that's what you need.
And I appreciate that you do it. But she wants eye-to-eye contact and sharing my soul. And that's companionship. That's painful for me. And the way I grew up, But I do that, I seek to do that because that's what my wife needs. Again, we have to be concerned about the things of the world, how to please our husband, how to please our wife. So she will sit and watch a football game with me sometimes. I'm sharing my soul. I'm trying to be open and naked and unashamed with my wife. We seek to meet each other's needs.
So how many of you have heard of Gary Chapman's The 5 Love Languages? And it's, I mean, they have all the different 5 languages for children, teenagers,
Yeah.
even for their dogs or
No,
something.
I think, no.
Yeah. But we're going to touch on the 5 love languages that Gary Chapman talks about in his book.
And realize, Gary Chapman proposes that there's 5 love languages, and we all need love in 5 ways, but what he says, and what we found in our own lives and in our counseling, that 1 or 2 generally stand out to all of us. One speaks love to us more than the others, and they tend to be different for the 2 of us.
So the first one is physical touch, and it doesn't necessarily mean sexual, okay? So, you know, as long as, you know, there's connection, there's touch, there's sitting next to each other. And that's Chris, one of his primary love languages. So because I know that, I make it a point to speak his love language every day. Whether, you know, when we're walking, I grab his hand. When we're in the car, I grab his leg. When he's sitting on the computer, I'll come by and I'll rub his back. And even in the summertime here in Arizona, when it is so hot and I don't even want him close to me, when we go to bed, I always make sure that I have one foot on his foot or, you know, against his leg or something, because that's how he's connected. That's how he feels love. And so every single day, whether I want to or not, I want to show love to him. And that's how I connect. Now, at the beginning, when we studied this, I would say to him, but you're like a porcupine sometimes with the quails ready to come out. It's like, I don't even want to get close to you. But you know what? I realized that, you know what? There are other ways I can connect. And by me coming around different ways, just to rub his back while he's sitting, you know, somehow letting him know that I'm aware of him, you know, those quails don't come out like they used to.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so that's one way is touch, physical touch.
And what we tend to do is speak our love language to other people. So when we first got married, I had my hands on Carmen all the time. You'll go off camera. And she would move away, and it's like, it's like you're pawing me because you're always touching me, because it's not her primary love language. And so we have to realize that it's going to be different. The second love language is quality time, and that's just spending time together. You know, watching a game, doing things together, playing games. It's having that time where we're focused on each other.
And Chris mentioned watching the game. I mean, watching the game for him may not be watching or quality time for her. So it's got to be something that, you know, quality time, meaning what's quality time for you.
Right.
Me sitting watching the game with him is not quality time for me, because I'm only doing that because that's what he likes. Mm-hmm. So, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. The next one is acts of service.
And that's Chris's second.
No.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry.
That's
my primary love language is acts of service. So whenever Chris does something for me, oh my gosh, it speaks volumes. And I'll give you an example. You know, in Arizona, it gets very hot in the summertime here. And our next door neighbor has these trees, or they're bushes, but they're like trees. And they, in the spring, they fill up with leaves, and their branches drape into our yard. So, and it's beautiful because it blocks off all the other houses and everything's nice shade and so forth. And so, but in the fall, guess what happens to all those leaves? They all come tumbling down into our backyard and into our pool, and it is a mess. So one summer, or not summer, one time I had asked Chris, I said, honey, do you think you can go out there and trim some of those branches that are draping into our backyard so that way all those leaves don't fall into our pool and yard? And he goes, yeah, I'll get to it sometime.
And realize I hate yard work.
He does.
I grew up, by the time I was about 6 years old, my father stuck a lawnmower in my hand, and I grew up in Seattle, and we had yards. And so I would spend half a day mowing the yard and taking care of stuff, and I hate doing yard work.
So I left it. You know, I thought, well, I probably won't get to him, but at least I mentioned it to him. So one day during the summer, it was in August, it was hot as can be. I'm in the kitchen working, and I see this movement in the backyard. So I look out the window, and there's Chris. He's out there trimming all those branches that are draping into our backyard. And I'm standing there, and I'm watching him, and he's all dirty and sweaty and all that. And it's like I'm looking at him, and I'm going, wow, does he look sexy?
Yay.
And it's like, oh my gosh, I felt so loved because he was out there doing that. He wasn't doing it for himself. He was doing it because he wanted to speak my love language.
Exactly.
So you could see how doing these different acts of service or whatever speaks love, how it speaks volumes.
And so the next one is receiving gifts. That's Carmen's secondary one. And I do try to buy her little things, and if she expresses a desire for something, if we're traveling, I will seek to get that for her because it speaks love to her and she won't buy it for herself. And then the last one is words of affirmation. And that's just affirming your spouse. And that's my secondary love language. I like the positive things. And so Carmen seeks to do that on a regular basis.
And I'll just touch a little bit on this one, words of affirmation, because again, we're so quick to point out the negative. We're so quick to think about, what our mate is not doing. And God tells us not to do that. He tells us again in His Word. And what scripture?
Philippians 4:13.
To think about whatever is good, whatever is noble, whatever is excellent, think about the good things. And so take it a step further and acknowledge that to our mate. Tell them they look good, or they appreciate what they did, or thank you for doing this, or I noticed that. It speaks volumes. So that's another area where I try every day at least one thing to tell my husband, encourage him, and say words of affirmation. And again, these things are not that hard, you guys, right? It's just a matter of doing it, not doing it because you're waiting for our mate to do it. Just do it because that's what God wants you to do, and because you want to change the dynamic of your relationship.
And again, our spouse's love language most likely is not our love language. It's different. So we need to discover that and then speak it. And this can change. When we do seminars, we tell couples this can transform your relationship today. If you start speaking your spouse's love language and meeting their needs where they're at, the needs they have. And so we have to realize we're different. And no, you won't see me outside dressed like that. I think I could fit into those pants, though.
I got rid of them.
And she got rid of the shirt. And so we're different. We have different needs. We have different love languages, and we need to learn each other. We need to invest the time, take some time to learn about our spouse, learn his or her needs. So what can we do? how to meet the needs. First, we have to discover what his or her needs are. And then be purposeful to seek to meet his or her needs, to do something about this.
We have to be intentional.
Yes, to be intentional. And to be intentional every day. And so, to be, like Carmen said, she is purposeful every day about touching me and about speaking words of affirmation. And so I'm also intentional, and I don't get how sweeping the porch could make somebody feel loved, but it makes my wife feel loved. So if I see the porch messy, I will go get the broom, sweep the porch, and not to go point out, hey babe, did you see I swept the porch for you? No, I sweep it, and because that's what she likes. She likes our house clean. She likes the entryway for people to come in to be clean. Demonstrating respect for your husband. Wives, again, like Carmen said, it's a command. But also it's a command for husbands to love your wife. Demonstrate that love. Not, the guy that told me that, I told her once and she ought to remember it.
And you're saying that when we say demonstrate love for your wife, that shows up different with every couple. Yeah. It's different for every couple. So we, one of the areas that we can help our mate is to articulate, communicate how that looks to you, how that would make you feel if they did certain things. And because, like you said, something about I told my wife I loved her, words are cheap, guys.
Yeah.
Words are cheap. It's the demonstrating, doing those loving things, just like Chris. He doesn't get how him doing the dishes or emptying out the washing machine, he doesn't understand. It doesn't make sense to him that I would feel loved that he would do that. But I kid you not. It's like, oh my gosh, you would do that for me? You'd help me that way? And it just speaks volumes. So love languages is a huge way to demonstrate love, but there's other ways, and you can ask your mate, or your mate can ask you, what do you need from me that will demonstrate love? Oh my gosh, we would be blown away, right?
Like Carmen said, words are cheap. And then a few weeks ago, we were doing a seminar, and the pastor bought one of our T-shirts. I love my wife T-shirts, and put it on over his shirt. And I kid you not, he wore that shirt Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Made me wear my shirt on Sunday. I was going to wear a suit to speak at his church, and he said, no, wear your I love my wife shirt. But did that make his wife feel loved? No, because there was no demonstration of the love. That wasn't her love language. Her love language is probably quality time.
Yeah,
because
he's so busy.
He's so busy and neglecting her. And it's like, look, I love my wife. But it didn't make her feel loved because he wasn't doing those things that spoke love to her. Mm-hmm. And so it's a matter of demonstrating that love, but like Carmen said, demonstrating it in a way that speaks love to her. Because I could go touch Carmen all day long, and guess what? There's only a certain point that makes her feel loved. After a while, it's just pawing her. But I can go empty the dishwasher, sweep the front porch, clean something, and she feels loved. And so it's speaking love her way, not my way.
I know you guys are thinking that's really odd or bizarre, but as a lot of women feel the same way because they're working all the time outside of the home, then they come home and do all the work here. They feel like all they're doing is serving and doing and not getting enough help. But a lot of women, acts of service speaks volumes.
Yeah. And so again, speak his or her love language. Be creative. There's a book called 101 Great Nights of Romance. And it's not a Christian book, it's a secular book. But what a fun way to meet needs, speak love to your spouse. You can find them on Amazon, pretty inexpensive. We bought them for our pastors. We ought to buy one for Pastor Mike. But it's a great way to express that love and to be creative. I tell you what, I'm a lot more creative than I used to be. I didn't know what to do, but this book helped me do a lot of cool things. And so we just had a thing, showed a video, and I had this Zorro mask on, black shirt, rose in my teeth, knocking on the door, and it was something that I learned from the book. And my wife really thought it was great for her. I felt like a goofball. But we had, yeah, she did, and we had a blast. Because that's the last thing, is have fun. This isn't supposed to be about work.
Or fighting.
Yeah, it's having fun. So again, in translating some of this for you guys on the webinar to in ministry, realize that not only your spouse, your children, your family, your friends, but your congregation has needs also. And many, many people are going around with unmet needs. And so two things with that. One is to be careful, because have boundaries, because you start meeting somebody's needs, it's going to draw you close. So if you're speaking a woman in your congregation, you're speaking her love language, she's going to feel loved. And so you want to be careful about that. But the other thing is, use it to transform relationships. It can change any relationship. We use this, we know all of our grandchildren's love languages, and seek to speak our grandchildren's love languages. So our challenge to you is to be aware of needs, realize that God created us with needs, first with Him and then with each other. And so seek to be a person to meet needs, to make other people happy, not to get your needs met, and people to make you happy. So have a good discussion. We will see you back in a little bit for our last session. God bless you.
Yeah. Excellent. I see they're getting tired and taking my shoes off. Nobody would see that.
I know.
I'm like, we should have done some.
But you know, when you have your shoes on, or you don't have your shoes on, it's like if you don't feel complete, right? If you're not wearing the right